Hey there, awesome physics students. Let's talk about some energy conversion examples in some common everyday life scenarios. And we want to think about how to use our different categories of energy and how that energy changes form from one into another with some simple everyday common examples. The first example we want to think about here is a person who has a giant weight and they lift the giant weight up over their head like so. There's their head. Let's not forget their head. And the idea here is that now the barbell, when they lift this barbell up above their head, the barbell now seems to have more gravitational potential energy than it started with. So where did that energy come from? Well, it must have come from the person's body. And if it comes from their body, that must be chemical energy inside their body, that ATP-ADP cycle that comes from the food that we eat. Okay, so let's write our energy conversion down. The energy originally came from the person's body. That's the object that it came from. And the form of energy that it was chemical energy. And in the process is denoted with the arrow. That's the lifting process. It was converted into the barbell now has, or the weight, now has more gravitational potential energy. So that's the object, and then the form of energy is gravitational potential energy. And really it's the weight and the Earth system, because the weight and the Earth now are farther apart, their centers are farther apart, there's more energy in that system. But because in this with this form of energy, the Earth is always present in that system. I'm not going to write it down every time, but please be aware it's always there. It's always part of that system. Okay, but this can't be the only form of energy. Well, it isn't. And one way we know that it isn't the only form of energy that this chemical energy is converted into is because if the person did this repetitively, what would they experience? Well, you know intuitively they will get hot. So that is thermal energy, and that will be increase inside their body. So the object is the body, and the form of energy is thermal energy. Okay, so so we're saying that the chemical energy in the body was converted into gravitational potential energy in the weight. Of course, that's in the Earth too. And the body also experiences a rise in thermal energy. Okay, so let's think about another everyday example that you've probably had even today, and that is you take your phone and you plug it into the wall to charge the battery of the phone. So what are the forms of energy there? Well, we can probably guess on this side of the equation is going to be chemical energy, because we're trying to increase the energy inside the battery. That's the whole point of doing this. But where does that energy come from? Well, it must have come from the socket, right? Because you have to plug it in the socket. And that's going to be this electromagnetic category. It's electric energy, and that's in the wires in your wall, which ultimately is from the electrical grid. So I'm going to use the grid. Now you could put the wires here too. But the energy is coming from the electrical grid, and that's electromagnetic energy. It's electric energy. I'm just going to abbreviate that, electromagnetic, like that. And in the process here, the process is denoted with an arrow. That's the charging. The battery is going to experience an increase in the form of energy it holds, which is chemical energy. But it isn't a completely efficient process, right? If you charge the battery from dead, or if you charge it really fast, if you use a fast charger, you notice that the phone gets a little bit warm. And in fact, some of this, some of the energy will be converted into thermal energy. It's undesirable, but it happens anyway. The battery experiences that, the phone experiences that, and the wires actually in between here experience a little bit of increase in thermal energy too. So I'm just going to call this the phone plus the wires will experience an increase in thermal energy. Okay, So hopefully this gives you some ideas on how everyday examples can be broken down into an organized framework to think about the different forms of energy going in, the process by which it gets converted, and then the different forms of energy coming out into which objects. All right?